Tonight, she was always too afraid to speak out. Until now. A serving Metropolitan Police officer tells our reporter Jo Caution why she didn't feel able to speak to anyone at work about how she was raped by her colleague, David Carrick.
Mud sticks, reputation sticks, you're going to go through the forces. She's alleged rape. No one's going to want you in their unit, that's for sure. And that's sad that that's how it was.
Also tonight, fresh doubts about whether HS2 will make it all the way to central London. A man dies while fixing an outdoor urinal in the West End. And we're with Lambeth's own Mo Gilligan, inspiring the next generation at the Brit School. Good evening. PC David Carrick was a serial rapist. He went to jail last week after admitting 49 sexual offences against 12 women. One of those women was a colleague of his, a serving Metropolitan Police officer. The woman, whose name we've changed to Michelle to protect her identity, said she didn't feel able to report it because of what she describes as a dismissive culture at the Met. She says she felt that if she had spoken up, it would have been the end of her career at the force. She spoke to Jo Caution.
Came across as a really charming, friendly guy, but he was also a bit of a womaniser. He'd slap the backside of a female WPC. He had a massive ego.
This is Michelle's description of former police constable David Carrick. She's a serving Metropolitan Police officer of more than 20 years and one of 12 victims of the serial sex offender. They worked together for a short period in 2004 and started spending time with one another after their shifts. One night at his house, he raped her.
I could remember everything, so I could remember even the colour of his curtains. So it was a case of, it was buried, but it was still something I could recall. I think it has affected me. I'm cautious now.
Michelle has lived with and continued to work with this secret for nearly 2 decades, while climbing the ranks to a specialist role in the force.
Did you consider telling your employer what happened?
No, it's quite frankly, I would like to have done it, but it was never going to happen. Mud sticks, reputation sticks, you're going to go through the forces. She's alleged rape. No one's going to want you in their unit, that's for sure. And that's sad that that's how it was. And quite frankly, up until quite recently, it still was.
Michelle noticed Carrick's picture on TV while on shift. It was only then, she says, she felt compelled to come forward for the sake of other victims.
I'm sorry if they went through something that might have been dealt with and may have stopped him. I feel that, I let the other victims down by not reporting, especially as a fellow police officer.
Carrick will be sentenced over 2 days at Southwark Crown Court next month, where Michelle hopes he will be told he'll spend the rest of his life in prison.
What a brave woman you spoke to today, Jo. What has the Commissioner had to say about her testimony?
Well, so Mark Rowley had a one-to-one meeting with Michelle ahead of our interview, and he told her that he acknowledged that it would have been difficult to report what's happened to her at the time. He would not appear on camera to talk about this with us today, but told us in a statement that he commended her bravery, adding that they are determined not only to root out those who corrupt the Met, but to do everything they can to ensure women, both those who work at the Met and Londoners, have more confidence to report domestic and sexual abuse. Michelle wants to stress there are many good men and women in the force, but believes there are other people like Carrick still working there. She does think Rowley is the man to change the culture at the Metropolitan Police, but says it's going to take a very long time.
OK, Jo, many thanks. And there'll be much more on that shocking story on the evening news. Now, the mother of a woman who died in a crowd crush at Brixton's O2 Academy says she will fight to ensure those responsible are held to account and that justice is served. Rebecca Ikumelo was killed along with Gabby Hutchinson when music fans without tickets tried to enter the venue last month for a gig. Rebecca's mother spoke about her family's loss as the inquest into their deaths was opened.
When Rebecca died, I lost a daughter, a best friend and my confidant. Over the past few weeks, every time I think of her, I think about how loving and caring she was. She was an incredible mother to our 2 boys, and I'm just so sad that they will grow up in this world without having their mother there, especially our firstborn, who has autism.
A man died this afternoon after getting trapped in a public toilet in London's West End. He was an engineer who was carrying out maintenance work in Shaftesbury Avenue. Jay Akbar is there. Jay, tell us what's happened.
Geraint, this is a truly awful update because in the last hour or so we've learned that the man who was trapped and crushed in the hydraulic pop-up urinal that you might be able to see behind me has sadly died. Now, the emergency services were called here to the extremely busy Cambridge Circus just off Shaftesbury Avenue at about 1 p.m. today. As of 4 p.m, I understand that they were still working on freeing the man who at the time we understood had suffered very serious injuries. Now, for those who don't know, these hydraulic or pop-up urinals literally pop up out of the ground in the middle of the night when bars and pubs start to shut to give people a place to urinate. And in the day, they submerge back underground and would look like nothing more than a manhole cover to most people. And as you've just quite rightly said, this man was working on this urinal when he somehow became trapped. How that happened, we don't know, but the situation was so severe that ambulance crews, an air ambulance, 45 firefighters in 4 engines were dispatched to the scene immediately. Photos circulating online show them trying to lift the urinal with their bare hands. Eventually they did, and as soon as the white forensic tent went up behind me, Geraint, people started to expect the worst, and the worst case scenario was realised about an hour ago when the Met Police tweeted that the man had died and his next of kin had been told.
Jay Akbar, many thanks. Now, if you are among those who have had some doubts about whether HS2, the plan to build a new high-speed rail link between London and the north of England, will ever happen, well, today there have been reports that the line may be quite literally cut short. The Department of Transport have refused to confirm that rising costs mean the London terminus will now be at Old Oak Common instead of Euston. The Prime Minister has given assurances that the project will proceed as planned. Carolyn Sim reports.
Since the builders moved in, business has gone down. Next to the HS2 site at Euston, Ollie Udin owns an opticians. He's desperate for an end to the disruption. So today's reports that the project might not come as far as Euston after all have caused yet more uncertainty.
What helps us is whether yes or no. So as soon as they get their plans together and come to us and say, yes, we're coming here, then we can prep and carry on with the plans that we have. And if they're not coming here, then obviously we have to change the game plan, basically survival.
The original plan for HS2 was to have fast trains from Euston to the Midlands and the North. Reports now speculate that the main terminal could be built at Old Oak Common in West London instead to save money. A claim that both the Prime Minister and the Chancellor deny.
The government is committed to delivering all the plans that it's announced with rail.
Yes, we are, and I don't see any conceivable circumstance in which that would not end up at Euston.
But Robert Latham, who lives in Camden, told me delays wouldn't surprise him at all. From the balcony of flats nearby, he showed me how close his property is to the proposed new line. The cost of HS2 has already doubled in price. Inflation could drive it up even more. And Robert says it's residents who suffer.
We want to get our lives back, and we will only get our lives back when these construction works finish. If HS2 is going to be cancelled as far as Euston is concerned, cancel it now, and we can then get all the construction off site. But what we do not want is the constant uncertainty of it being deferred.
This part of the site is where Craig Douglas's pub used to stand. I spoke to him from his new home in Dorset. He said he had to move out of London after the pub was demolished because he couldn't afford to live here.
We've been in central London running pubs. I've been in central London for the last 40 years. All mine and my wife's friends and our children's friends are all in central London, and now I live 100 miles away because I could no longer afford to live in London, you know. I've already cashed in all my pensions and spent all my life savings to survive the last 5 years.
We're told the project will be completed in 2033, but many living and working nearby think even that timescale is unbearable. Carolyn Sim, ITV News.
A Grade 2 listed church in North London was destroyed by fire last night. St Mark's Church in St John's Wood had stood for 175 years. The vicar, Reverend Kate Harrison, who watched it go up in flames, told Natalia Jorquera she feels broken.
It's every priest's worst nightmare, and you think it's never going to happen. To see that now, it's quite a surreal, horrid nightmare.
A historic treasure destroyed by fire. At 11 o'clock last night, St Mark's Church went up in flames, with firefighters tackling the blaze until 2 a.m.
It spread incredibly quickly. I came out and just saw this beloved building, just the flames were just terrifying, actually.
I can't believe this.
12 fire engines and around 80 firefighters battled the blaze. The brigade said there were no injuries, but the fire produced so much smoke that they advised all local residents to keep their doors and windows closed. Though some neighbours were concerned that the fire might spread.
When the embers started to come out, you have chunks of wood that were on fire that were coming out, landing all the way down the street and behind the buildings. And so there was a bit of concern that there might be secondary fires. It became hard to breathe at one point.
This morning, church staff salvaged what they could, but the glass windows are gone and the roof no more. All that remains is a shell. To see it in this state is heartbreaking for those who have been coming here for decades.
I'm devastated. I heard from my friend this morning. I couldn't believe it. And I rushed down straight, and I can't contemplate, because I grew in this church and the church has done a lot for me.
St Mark's wasn't just a place of worship, it was also a community hub where comedy nights, concerts and well-being events were held. Its vicar hopes they can one day restore it.
This has been here for 175 years. We've served the community, we've loved the community for that long. We've got to make sure somehow that we can serve the community for at least the next 175 years.
Authorities are currently investigating the cause of the fire. But although this is all that is left of St Mark's, the community here say it's only the building that is destroyed, not the church. Natalia Jorquera, ITV News.
And there was a lucky escape for residents on a busy Stoke Newington High Street this morning. A building partially collapsed, sending huge slabs of concrete across the footpath. It happened just before 9:30, and some residents had been walking in its path just seconds beforehand. Coming up, a story with Sparkle, a teacher's ambition with his new children's book. Plus, Daniel Henry meets Mo Gilligan, who makes a special visit to the Brit School. But first, there are candles being lit in homes around the capital right now, and iconic landmarks are being cast in a purple light to commemorate Holocaust Memorial Day. The message: to never forget the horrors of the Holocaust and other genocides. Well, that message was one to which Ziggy Schipper dedicated much of his life. The Auschwitz survivor who settled in Radlett didn't talk about his experience of the Holocaust until he was 65 years old. He died last week at the age of 93, having spent 2 decades sharing his story with school children. The Prince and Princess of Wales have described him as charming and brilliant. Ziggy said his greatest achievement was his family, a means of showing Hitler that he didn't win. Anila Dami spoke to Ziggy's daughters.
Don't hate. That was Ziggy Schipper's message after he survived the Holocaust, spreading the message of love until his last day.
Our dad was a charismatic charmer, and he could charm anybody. He loved everybody and everybody loved him, and it has been totally overwhelming, the love that has poured through since he passed away.
Ziggy survived Auschwitz and the Stutthof concentration camps after he was deemed strong enough to work rather than be killed. Aged 15, he was liberated and came to England in 1947, where he was reunited with his mother, who he thought he'd never see again.
The worst thing for me personally was the beginning when I saw little children holding hands with each other and with their mothers, some of them, being taken away, and then finding out that within the hour of arrival, they were dead.
He'd been sharing his story for more than 2 decades to ensure it's never forgotten, along with the 6 million lives lost in the Holocaust.
I mean, he spent the last third of his life trying to educate young people on the horrors of the Holocaust and what hatred and racism can do.
Ziggy's story has reached many, and when he died on January the 18th, tributes flooded in, including from the Prince and Princess of Wales, who visited the Stutthof camp with Ziggy. Parliament also paid tribute.
In thanking Ziggy for his life, for his message, which is very vitally important as we sit here today, do not hate.
If I would see Hitler now, I would show him my family and tell him, you see, you killed 6 million Jewish people, but you didn't succeed. We're still here, and we'll always be here.
Ziggy has 2 daughters, 6 grandchildren and 6 great-grandchildren. Michelle and Lou recall the first time they visited Auschwitz with their father.
He hugged us both, and those were the words he said. Hitler didn't win.
I'm here with my family.
You are the living proof.
How do you plan on continuing Ziggy's legacy?
We're going to continue to give our presentations in schools and colleges and institutions. We want to continue his legacy, and we know that our children will as well.
And do not hate. My dad would want that to be his lasting legacy.
A message that will live on through his family. Anila Dami, ITV News.
Extinction Rebellion activists posed as suffragettes this morning as 7 women were sentenced for causing criminal damage to the Barclays headquarters in Canary Wharf. The protesters were comparing the illegal activity undertaken by suffragettes to win the vote to climate activists breaking the law for their cause. Actress Juliet Stevenson and the great-granddaughter of the leading suffragette Emmeline Pankhurst were there in support.
I think if you look at justice and right, it's really important that there is space for change. In my great-grandmother's words, they're not there to be law breakers, but to be law makers. And I think future generations will be castigating those who do not do something, not those who do something.
100 years ago, women fighting for the vote, for women's rights to vote, were treated as criminals too, but history has proved them to be heroines, and to have fought for a change that was essential, necessary. And the same is true of climate protesters today.
Next tonight, a story about a gay schoolboy called James. He's getting bullied, and that's horrible. And even worse, he's scared of what his dad might say if he tells him the truth about his sexuality. James is the creation of a teacher turned writer, Ian Eagleton, and he's the main character of Ian's new book, which is called Glitter Boy. And Ian is in the studio with us. Ian, did I get all that right? Tell us a bit more about James.
Well done. So Glitter Boy is a story of James. He's 11. He loves poetry, dancing, football, and Mariah Carey, of course.
Of course, the more Mariah Carey, the better.
Yes, we love it. And he starts to experience homophobic bullying, and the book's really about the impact that has on him, his relationships with his father, and it's really about him, I suppose, coming to terms with his sexuality, standing up for himself, finding some self-belief. And it's just a really happy, joyous, lovely story.
Well, no spoilers.
No spoilers.
Well, it's a story that's going to have a lot of resonance with a lot of people, I'm sure. You used to be a teacher yourself, as I mentioned. How much of this story has been inspired by your own experience?
A lot, I think. I mean, I drew on my experiences as a teenager and my experiences of homophobic bullying, but I also drew on my experiences of teaching primary school children and listening to some of the language they were using in the playground and some of the homophobic slurs they were using and things like that. And I know from my experience of teaching, it was something that I had to tackle in the curriculum and the things that I taught the children. And that's why I think LGBTQ+ content in our curriculum is just so important for teaching empathy and diversity.
Now, when I was at school in London, which was a little bit before you were...
Thank you for saying that.
No one that I was at school with was out, and the term gay was often used as a term of abuse. Is it your experience that things have at least improved since then? Or tell me.
Definitely. I mean, I think so. And when I was growing up as well, I always say I grew up under the long shadow of Section 28, which stopped schools, prevented them from talking about homosexuality. So I think so many teachers and schools are doing such a fantastic job now of promoting diversity and inclusion and teaching children about empathy. And just the fact that there's a book like this out there dealing with something like that is quite amazing, really. And I think it's a credit to all the teachers up and down the school and the school librarians who are getting books like this into our children's hands so that they can learn more about the world around them.
Well, and just quickly, it's not just a book for gay children, of course. It's a book for anybody who wants to learn about people with other experiences and other outlooks.
Yeah, I mean, children's books are for everyone. Everyone could do with reading children's books. They're some of the best books and most thoughtfully and carefully written books you can possibly imagine.
Especially this one. Ian,
Thank you.
many thanks. Great to talk to you.
Thank you.
Next tonight, the Brit Awards will be taking place in a couple of weeks' time at the O2 Arena, and the host again this year will be Mo Gilligan. Today, the award-winning South London comedian has made a special visit to the Brit School in Croydon. Daniel Henry went to meet him.
Everyone is here tonight. He's the Saturday night TV superstar who brings South London on stage wherever he goes.
Trees, where you at, Auntie Patrice? I see you. Come on, man.
Mo Gilligan will be hosting the Brit Awards next month, back again after this memorable debut.
Come from that dance era. Obviously, I'm in Ushuaia.
This is lovely. It's like Barbados. It's like Barbados. His sketches on social media brought his corner of the capital to life, leading to the big shows that he's doing now.
The geezer was always the character that kind of got people's attention. It's such a British thing. It's quite interesting in going to the States now and having to re-explain all that. They're like, what is a geezer? Is that like a pyramid in Egypt? I don't get it. So that's quite fun. But effectively, it's like, that's where I'm from. Through my comedy, I've been able to shed light on my background and where I'm from, that someone might not know what a Rastafarian is, but I can tell them, oh, my dad's a Rastafarian. And, you know, he'd sing my nursery rhymes like this. The wheels on the bus, I go around and around. And if someone they don't know it, but now they're getting an insight into what my life is like. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's also as much as there's someone that knows it, or that, oh my God, my dad's a Rasta, he used to do that. But there's also someone who's like, I'm not familiar with this, but I've learned something. So you're getting something from it as well.
You have this sense of community, I think. We see you on the stage, but through the characters and through some of the other artists that often join you, it's clear that it's bigger than you.
I always say there's a thing of like power in numbers, and for a long time I was on the circuit where it was almost kind of looked upon as like a niche of like, oh, like you do black comedy circuit, oh, well, good for you and your black friends. And it was like, but no, like we're really talented, and if I can get to this position and do really well for myself, then I feel like it's just as important to share that with those other people that I would have a 4-hour car journey to Manchester with, who's an equally good comedian and just as funny as I am. So that's what, you know, when people say, yeah, I have a platform, this is how I want to use it.
Nice to be here, do you know what I mean? I said,
when it comes to British music, there's no bigger platform than the Brit Awards.
different in my day, do you know what I mean?
We'll have to wait until next month to see what Mo does with it this time. Daniel Henry, ITV News.
Right, not quite as cold as it has been today. Is it going to stay like that? Chris Page has the weekend forecast.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV London Weekend Weather.
Hello there.
Very good evening to you. Today across the capital, we've eventually seen some spells of sunshine through this afternoon. And with the weekend, well, just around the corner now, it looks like it will be a largely dry weekend. There'll be some partly cloudy skies around. The best of any sunshine looks to be Saturday at the moment. But of course, with those clearing skies, we still have some chilly nights ahead. Here's the area of high pressure that's keeping us fairly quiet and settled. But it's this little frontal system which slides southwards as we go through Sunday, introducing more cloud, some very light outbreaks of rain before, well, some more windy weather and possibly something a little wetter as we go into next week. For the rest of this evening and overnight, though, well, we've got some clear skies around at the moment and, like I said, a chilly night to come. The blues on the chart here, that's suggesting the widespread, quite harsh frost overnight tonight. Temperatures in the home counties could be as low as -2 to -3 degrees Celsius with some pockets of freezing fog by dawn too. That freezing fog could be quite dense in a few areas, but that will soon lift and break as we go through the morning. Yes, partly cloudy to start, but hopefully seeing something much brighter as we work into the afternoon as well. The wind staying fairly light from the north, and where you got the sun on your back at this time of year doesn't feel so bad, but highs through tomorrow 6 to 7, maybe 8 degrees Celsius. That's the mid-40s in Fahrenheit. Then here comes that weather front southwards as we go through Saturday night and into Sunday. That will introduce further cloud, and where that cloud is thick enough, it could bring some light outbreaks of rain through the day on Sunday too. But as we look through the weekend, so it's a story really of a mostly dry weather to come. The best of any sunshine seems to be on Saturday. A chilly night, though, into Sunday once again before more cloud in the forecast on Sunday. Take care.
Vaillant sponsors ITV London Weekend Weather.
Finally tonight, one of the world's grandest pharmacies is celebrating its 225th birthday. John Bell and Croydon set up on Oxford Street in 1798. Pioneering treatments were developed on site and patients have included the Duke of Wellington and Florence Nightingale. It also holds 2 bottles of the oil which is used to anoint a new sovereign in the coronation ceremony. And there is, of course, one of those happening later this year. Anna Geary reports.
Committed to the health and well-being of Londoners for 225 years. It may not be a high street name, but John Bell and Croydon has been the go-to pharmacy for some significant historical figures. It boasts the Duke of Wellington and Florence Nightingale among previous patients.
Back in those days, you would have had your medicines personally made up for you. So you would have come into the pharmacy, spoken to a pharmacist about some of the complaints you might have had, and what the pharmacist would have then done is selected whatever ingredients would have been appropriate for you and hand-made your medicines, whether that was a tablet, liquids, solutions or cream.
This picture shows the premises in 1935. But the origin of the pharmacy dates back to 1798. It was based on Oxford Street, but moved here to Wigmore Street in 1912. And some manufacturing of the products was still taking place behind me into the early 2000s. But the making of medicines in the 1800s was largely unregulated. Concerned chemists, including John Bell and his son Jacob, wanted their profession to be more respected. Jacob founded the Pharmaceutical Society in 1841.
I think he was very passionate about wanting to make sure that pharmacy grew in terms of regulations as well.
An ability to innovate, but the pharmacy too takes pride in maintaining traditions, like looking after the royal family and providing remedies for monarchs visiting from overseas. This oil could soon be used for the crowning of King Charles.
So this is something that is used during the coronation of a new king or queen. So it's part of a ceremony that's conducted that's quite private and certain areas of secrecy around it. We've had this stored in our controlled drug safe, so it's very safe downstairs.
And are you able to tell us what's in it?
Basically, like Coca-Cola, it's a closely guarded secret, but there are certain ingredients that we do know. So there's ambergris in it, which is quite an expensive and rare ingredient.
In the meantime, John Bell and Croydon will celebrate their birthday by giving a new beauty brand the chance to launch in store. The pharmacy hope to continue keeping the capital happy and healthy for the next 2¼ centuries. Anna Geary, ITV News.
And we're back with the latest after ITV News at 10. Charlene is here next with the ITV Evening News, but from me and the rest of the London team, bye-bye.